Welcome to the Digital Marketing Podcast with Bill Hartzer. Today we're talking about TLDs, top-level domains, and some SEO testing that I have done and completed. And I'll tell you actually some insights into the actual results. The results actually are available with a later on with a PDF download file, and it is about 8,200 words, and with descriptions and all of the data to help you make your own decisions on which TLD or which domain name you should register, or which website, the location that you put your website. So if you see here, let's looking a little bit right now, and if you're seeing my screen, this is the NTLD stats /TLD website. What this website shows is a live view of the number of domain names registered in certain TLDs. A TLD is a top-level domain, and throughout this podcast, I will mention TLD, and that means top-level domain. That really means is the ending. That is whether it's you're probably familiar already with .com, .net, .org. Those are top-level domains, and those are the endings. And they also are called domain extensions. But let's use the keyword phrase or the phrase top-level domain as TLD. So basically, the NTLD stats website shows the new GTLDs, which are considered the generic top-level domains, and the number of domain names registered in each TLD. As of this podcast, I'm looking at this and seeing that the ICU and .top and .xyz are the top three, with 5 million, 3 million, and 2 million domain names registered with those endings. This is key because what I've done is I've done some SEO testing along with the help of Digital Ear and the SIA's SEO Intelligence Agency. What we've done is we want to figure out, and I wanted to figure out specifically, if there is any bias in search engine rankings and primarily indexing and rankings when it comes to which TLD you should register your domain name with. For example, if you registered your domain name with a .com ending, is that better or is that worse for indexing web pages on your website? And is it better or worse for when it comes down to search engine rankings, and whether or not and how visible your website will be for that particular keyword or your top keywords? We had to do several different things, and I tracked the results once we did some setup. So basically, what I chose is I went through a process basically of looking at and figuring out which domain TLDs I wanted to register, and then which domains I wanted to register, and then actually which domain names I thought were more worthy of testing. So the process basically is that I went through is I picked a list of TLDs based on popularity and the number of domain name registrations, and overall using the NTLDstats.com website, I was able to see that the ICU.top.xyz, .site.online, .club, .vip were probably ones that I wanted to use because those actually have a lot of domain name registrations and they're fairly popular. The next what I did is I wanted to make sure that I'm not just looking at the new TLDs, but I wanted to make sure that list of domains that we're testing and the TLDs we're testing actually use both old and new TLDs. We've picked several different new TLDs, but I want to actually look at old TLDs, or ones that have been around for a while, like .com, .net, and .org. And I did want to make sure also that the country code TLDs, things that are actually country endings, so like the country code TLD would be .fr for France, .co to UK for the UK, for United Kingdom, and .de for Germany, and .in for India. So what I chose is I actually chose the .com, .net, .org, the .de, the .co to UK, the .co, because the .co is actually for the country of Colombia. However, at the same time, a lot of websites, because of the fact that they cannot get the or use or register the .com, they have chosen to use a .co. So that is an interesting dilemma here, because whether or not, one thing I wanted to test and see is whether or not the .co is seen as a country code TLD, ccTLD, for Colombia, or if it's just seen as a generic word, for example, or a generic TLD that doesn't have any is not tied to any particular language or country and so forth. The other thing is that I wanted to use a .city domain, TLD. .London, for example. In fact, .London is actually available for anybody to register. The .NYC for New York City actually has some restrictions, and you have to have an address in one of the 5 boroughs of New York City in order to use one of those. So it's fairly limited at some point. But the .London is actually available for anyone to register, and so I included that in the test. Also, the .in for India, which is also a ccTLD. However, at the same time, it's been around for a while, and it's used and fairly widely popular. So at this point, what I want to do is I want to pick those TLDs. What I needed to do is make up a word. And one of the difficult parts, I need to find a word. I finally come up with a word that did not have a lot of search engine results, was a made-up word, and so there wasn't anybody really targeting on the web targeting that keyword. It just so happens that that particular keyword this made-up word I used, really had only 16 results in the search engine in Google, in the Google search results, and that particular keyword, in fact, that I chose, ended up having only being mentioned on some old newspaper websites as a word for some reason. So what we did is I picked a word which was a backwards word. So I chose the word NamesCon, because NamesCon is actually a popular domain name conference, and I reversed that word and spelled it NOCSEMAN. And I'm not gonna I'm not going to attempt to pronounce it, but NOCSEMAN, which is NamesCon spelled backwards. What I did is I registered all those domain names, and on December 27th, and then actually used and went through and used that word and set up one website per domain name with 25 pages of content. And essentially, you'll be able to see in a few minutes, if you actually do a search for NOCSEMAN on Google, you actually see some of the pages, and we'll get to those pages that are ranking in a few minutes. Track the indexing of each website. So once you actually register a website and you go through the process of creating a website, and you want it to show up in this Google search engine and the Bing search engine. You want to get it, you want to optimize it, but you want to get it indexed. And you have to get your website crawled, and then it has to get indexed. So basically, when you're talking about indexing, okay, we're talking about getting pages actually to show up in the search results. And a website has to first get those pages crawled by the search engines, and then they have to get indexed. And there's a couple different processes that the search engines go through. What we did is actually started tracking the rankings of the keywords for each website. So we basically set up one keyword that we tracked, one main keyword for every single website. This is a random string of characters. It's not a word. It's actually a made-up word. We actually then started tracking the progress, and I went through and as we went through the process, I wrote notes and I wrote my analysis of what was going on. What I would like to talk about now is actually out of the 15 TLDs that were registered, some of the results. So out of the 15 TLDs registered, one ccTLD, which is the country code TLD, was determined to actually be the main language for that country. So based on the TLD. So if we look specifically here at an example, okay, the NLCSEMAN.DE, which is actually for Germany, we actually, if you look at the website, we have no content or no indication anywhere that this actually is in German. And in fact, it is not in German. It's just made up words that are not in German. What we've determined is fairly quickly after Google started to index these pages, in this case, the NLCSEMAN.DE, Google had already made up their mind that this website was German. And that's I would call that a bias. They've already determined based on the .de only, and even though this is hosted in the United States, there's no indication that it is a German website. Google made the opinion, just assumed, and had some kind of bias that this was a German website. If this was a website that somebody had picked a brand and kind of did what we call hacking of the domain name, where you have a word, and I'm trying to think of a word that ends in blade, BLA.DE. Okay, that is if you use that or you made up a longer phrase, and that actually word was added with you added a dot into the word, and it ended up with DE as in BLA.DE for blade. That actually is kind of what you call a hack of a domain name, or a domain name hack, or something similar to that. And it could be actually blade rather than blade.com, but BLA.DE. And I've seen that done. OW.ly. I've also seen a bit.ly, bit.ly. So basically, it's a word that's possible, but there is a bias here that Google thinks that this is a German website, where in fact there is no indication that this is in German. Now, one of the other aspects is one of these websites. Okay, one of these websites actually almost immediately started to get its pages indexed by far within a few hours, and we're talking about very quickly compared to all of the other websites. This TLD, this one website, ended up getting 40% of its pages indexed in Google extremely quickly, and Google was extremely aggressive in crawling that one particular website that we had. These are, these websites are all similar in nature. And the only real big difference is the TLD, and that's what we're testing. In fact, at the same time, a few of the websites were extremely difficult to get their pages indexed. It's like Google did not want to index these websites and initially, because what we had to do after 9 days, we didn't have any of the pages indexed. Google had not even decided to index them. So we actually had to go through a process of verifying the site. As you will see, in some of these, doing a site calling with nocceman .de, for example, the Google site verification file is actually indexed in Google. You'd think Google would not index this particular page because it's one of their own pages, but yet that's an interesting fact that they do index that. They did find the page, so they indexed it. But some of these websites, a few in particular, one in particular, within a few hours of verifying and submitting the one page of each website in the URL inspection tool, we ended up with literally almost a very large percentage, 40%, within an hour or two of it for one particular website, one particular TLD Google really, really likes. There's another one, like as I mentioned, some of these others are extremely difficult to get their pages indexed. So if that's the case, if you can't really get a pages index on a domain, you probably might want to choose another TLD if you're relying on pages getting indexed. If you want maybe a leg up on the competition, you want to use a website that is going to get indexed very quickly and aggressively, you might actually use a.xyz, because that actually is one of the fastest indexing TLDs right now. That's what we found based on these test results. A few of the websites had their main keyword rank very well, very quickly. So we actually took and one unique keyword. And if you see, for example, on this one right here, that nocceman.co, the unique keyword is the WSGSQDCJJBRG, and it's a made-up word, the random characters. But that site ranks 19 pages on that website ranks for that keyword. Okay, which I think is important to note. What we did is we took a look, and once these pages were indexed, we wanted to see how they are ranking and how quickly they're ranking. We come down to it, some of those ranks happen very quickly. One of the domain names actually failed miserably. We couldn't even get pages on that site to get indexed, let alone get them to rank for the designated odd characters that we were targeting. Worth noting also is that two of the domains, the .de and the .co, were actually almost immediately considered a ccTLD. I would expect the .de to have a translate this page, but the .co actually Google thinks just because it's a .co domain, Google actually thinks that this website is in Spanish. So if you were actually to look at it, it's not in Spanish, it's a bunch of characters. But Google thinks, and as added, because I'm using google.com and my primary language is set as English, they want to translate this automatically from Spanish to English. The only indication that Google has that this is a Spanish website is the TLD, a .co. So if you were to actually get a .co and use that for your website, you would want to make sure that the hreflang tags and any indication in the code that tells Google that this is an English-speaking website, there may be a bias and in the fact that Google thinks that .co automatically is Spanish because it's a .co for Colombia. That can be, an issue for potential new websites that are not in Spanish if it's not set up properly. The next part of part of our results, one of the websites actually ended up getting none of its pages indexed according to our SEO testing tool. So what we actually did, there's a couple ways that we looked at the testing, and looked at, there's the first way, which is mostly the primary, like I say, the most fair way of testing pages index is really to take this string of characters, which is a keyword, one main keyword for each page, or for each website, is, like this WSG keyword here. If you actually look at this WSG keyword, in this case, that is for the .co. And what we did is basically did a search. The software did a search for this keyword and looked to see how many pages and how many results are there in the top 100. Okay. In this case, there's 19 pages showing. In some cases, there's more or less. And that's how we determined pages indexed. They were is because if we were actually to use a different type of search, in which I did follow along and I did present these results as well. If you actually do, is this search site:/NOCSEMAN.co, and let's do that right now. This actually has 28 pages indexed. Okay, this is a different search and a different search results. This is different than the actually looking for the keyword and determining that there are 19 pages indexed for this search. Okay, so there's different data, and in fact 2 of the search results show up, and then we have to repeat the search with the omitted to get really true. Now we're showing 26, and the other one is also showing 28. So there are differences there. I've documented both of these during this whole process and in the timeline of how we did this testing. Let's change gears a little bit. Let's look specifically at the .de, and let's look at Google Search Console data. Because Google Search Console data, for example, you can actually see 26 valid pages that are indexed. All of the websites have one page excluded because there was a redirect. Okay, that just happened the way the websites were set up. That's fine. The valid pages, can be a different number than was actually is showing for the .de. If we look at for the .de, and we actually see 27 pages indexed. If we actually look at Search Console, we see 26 pages and 27, one excluded. So that's 27. But this data is in theory different than actually the site:/, which is search operator, which the site search operator, which is different than actually the other way we looked at it, which was searching for the keyword, which would show those results. If we go back to the .de, let's look at the performance. Most of the domains at the conclusion of the testing, which is after 19 to 20 days. Now we're on the 20th day as I record this. What happened is none of the domain names got any clicks, which is fine. Which is expected because these are made up words. The total impressions, most of them who were anywhere, and I have the data in my final report, the data shows that the most impressions were from 4 to 8 to 14 impressions over the period of time. This .de, which is a website which is very, very similar to many of the others, or all of the others, except, actually, with 25 pages, has 198 impressions, 0 clicks, and that's fine. The average position is 76. The other website's average position is about first. Okay, as we start to scroll down here, we actually are seeing certain, if I select average position and clicks, there's actually a keyword that is ranking number 1. It has only 1 impression. That's fine, but it's ranking number 1, and we didn't really do anything but get it indexed. Okay, that's that's interesting. And this .de has pages indexed I don't recall exactly. I have to look at the data how aggressively, but it wasn't extremely aggressive that Google indexed these pages. But there are a significant amount of pages indexed, and most of the pages are indexed for this domain now. However, the impressions in the average position is, and actually the fact that one of them is ranking first, in first position for a keyword, that's pretty interesting to me to see that, because that is only one domain name that out of all of them that where this stands out as far as the data goes. Final data, final words. Basically checking, as I mentioned, checking for pages index reveals different results depending how you check. Again, site colon versus actual keywords showing up versus the performance data, actually the coverage data. This all is different data, and is presented differently by Google. In fact, as you can see, we do have one of no clicks, which is fine, and we do have 26 pages indexed. In fact, one of the things I'd also mention is that these websites, and I will show you one of the pages, it's all text. There is no formatting, okay? This, in fact, is probably as mobile friendly as you can get, because you can read it. There is no there's no font specified. But if we go back, and I'll point this out, these sites are all the same. They're text. That's it. That's all that's there. Well, we began to, about several days into this, we began to get mobile usability error reports and notices in Gmail, and in our email inbox that basically said that these sites had problems, like the text was too close together, and some of those typical mobile usability errors. Well, it's not possible because this is a text only website. So I'm kind of confused, if you will, about why these were sent. However, if you look at the data that in the final report, you will actually see that based on you'll see some of the errors. Text too small to read. Well, there is no, this is a website that is actually just text, and there is no formatting. There's no large size, no small size. So these particular two errors and it's only on 12 pages. Okay, which means there's only on 12 pages of the 26 pages. So there's questions here. Why did they not show it on all pages? Some of these websites that are all the same got messages, got 3 errors, and some got 2. And I believe all of them did get some kind of mobile usability report about it, and which is kind of concerning, because actually, it's not actually looking at the content, I don't think, because there is no usability, because this is all text and that's all it is. One other thing, finally, is that I'll end here with, is the fact that searching for the made-up word. Let's look back. We made up one word for every website, okay? And it was a string of characters. And in this case, for the .co is WSGSQDGJJBRG, which you cannot pronounce and is a made-up word. Fine. Let's go back to that original NamesCon spelled backwards, though, which is NOCSEMAN. Okay, when I originally did the search for NOCSEMAN before the testing or before any domain names were registered, that first time there were 16 newspaper pages that were in the results. okay, that said, okay, that's fine. I can deal with those rankings, and that would be a good keyword to use. The NOCSEMAN, Noxaman, Noxaman, that, or that word, NamesCon backwards, does not appear anywhere on the websites. And that is important because we're not using that word on any of the websites here. The only place it appears is in the domain name itself. We do not have any links to these websites. They are random sites. Now, it is believed, and based on what I am seeing in the results, is that that particular phrase, and let's take a look at the search results right now for NOCSEMAN, there is a there are websites and of these sites that are ranking for that keyword. And that is only because that word appears in the domain name. It does not appear anywhere on the website whatsoever at this point in time. And there are no links to these websites at this point in time. However, NOCSEMAN, a page on that particular domain name, NOCSEMAN.net, ranks number 1. And another page on the .net ranks number 1. And the third ranking is the .com. The fourth ranking is the .com, and then we have the XYZ. That was the XYZ in particular was the domain name that Google loved to index and immediately index all of their pages. The .top did, and then we have the ranking for the .club, .co.uk, the .london, the .org, the .online, the .in, the .site, .vip, and the .de, and then .co. And then we have the newspaper websites where that particular word was mentioned back from a while back before this testing. So that is another indication that Google is in fact reading that keyword in the domain name. They're reading it in the domain name, and it can rank in the domain name. And that is important. I do believe that is important because of the fact that they're looking at that. I don't know why the .net is ranking above the .com. That is, it's going to be interesting to follow. Again, we don't have any content using on the site, and we do not have any links, as far as I know, at this point in time to any of these websites. You can actually follow along in the future. These websites will be up and running for a while, and you can do a search for that word, NOCSEMAN. Let's see how they do over time. That I do expect the rankings to change, even though there are no links right now and there's no mentions of content. So I'd like to thank again Clint Butler from Digital Ear, and as well as SEO intelligence agency, the SIA. If you are interested in any further SEO tests like this, there's a lot of SEO testing that is done on a monthly basis. If you're interested in learning and seeing the results of these tests, I do have some links in the final report that has all of the results and all of the data. So that's available on my website, www.hartzer.com. And I will probably have some blog posts out there as well detailing some of the results, and have links out there where you can download the PDF file, which is a 27-page, 8,200-word document about the SEO testing that I've done. This has been the Digital Marketing Podcast with Bill Hartzer. Talking today about top-level domains and how we tested and whether or not a top-level domain a keyword domain is ranking, how they get indexed, and we put head-to-head 15 domains and 15 TLDs, ccTLDs, and so forth, and we tested them all, and these are the results. If you have any questions, get in touch, billhartzer.com or hartzer.com. Again, thanks again for listening today with the Digital Marketing with Bill Hartzer podcast. We'll see you online.